Sadistic Penguin Studios presents the At the Show podcast with Tom Yumper Garcia.
Okay, you people sit tight, hold the fort, and keep the home fires burning. And if we're not back by dawn, call the president.
And Tony Tulsa Burt.
I don't know this industry jargon, YP, MP, whatever, okay? All I know is that I cannot get a record contract. We cannot get a record contract unless I take these tapes.
It's almost time, so grab a drink, get your popcorn ready, and join the film discussion with two guys from Chicago talking movies.
Hello and welcome to episode 33 of the At the Show podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Tom Yumper Garcia, and my other co-hosts seem to have dropped off with some technical difficulties. So we have to wait for Tone to come back on, and for that we play the Price is Right sound. Promise no internet issues today. And he lied to us. But we got a big show planned for today. We are going to be going over our favorite slasher films, and we actually kind of dug into like some deep cuts in here. There are some popular ones that you might know, and there are some ones that you haven't heard of, which I'm really, really excited to get to. And he's back, everyone. He's back. Hey, Tony, you're back.
Oh man, everybody. Hello. I just did a show a little while ago where now there was not one issue. And at the end, I said, I just promise I won't throw my computer. I'm not going to be angry. I'm glad I got a great host who knows how to handle it because I don't understand. But that being said, I'm glad to be here. It's going to be a great show. No more issues.
Sam said, I must have said something mean about a soundtrack and he got scared. So scared he left.
No, Sam, I'm here. I'm glad to be here. I'm so glad, and it was like the oddest thing because it literally kicked. It's never done this before. Usually, it literally kicked me out of the room, which was, I don't know what's going on, my man. There's ghosts in the computer. There's ghosts and behind us on our, which is kind of cool. A ghost face is just behind us.
Yeah, he's playing with his knife,
stabbing me because of my internet over and over again.
Yeah, I'm gonna turn it off because it's kind of like hypnotizing me. But it's kind of cool. Like we're talking about, we're going to go through our favorite slashers for today. But when our intro song plays, the waiting music that we have, you don't hear it on the audio version because you cut it out. But on the YouTube version, I love that song, dude. I like listening to that song like at going to work. It's called Sahara Cowboy. It's like one of my favorite like instrumental songs. No, Sam. But I was just thinking about that while I was playing. I listen to that like at least every day. I don't know why, because I'm a weirdo, but one of my favorite songs. But how you doing, Tone? How you doing? Today's Friday? You just got through doing a great show with the Hookup on Music, and you ready to talk some movies today, my man?
Oh, I am very much ready. These are some of my favorites, and I'm excited to dig through that. And I'm excited to talk with our first guest, always bringing classics. I'm constantly always thinking about the conversations that we have with her, so this is going to be exciting.
Yeah, so it's another episode of Keelin's Cuts will be coming on right after we go through the what we've been watching segment, and she's got a film that I have not heard in a very long time. It's very old, and it's a short film. It's a Disney film, which I thought was pretty cool. But before we get to Keelin, let's go straight into what we've been watching.
That's a me. And also, what were you just watching?
So what were you watching this week, my man?
A pair of Stephen King movies that I have been digging into. One, I believe you have covered on your 31 Days of Horror, and that is Stephen King's The Dead Zone. I am a huge fan of this movie for lots of different reasons. I like the storyline especially, which is really cool, but I also like just a lot of different things about it. Christopher Walken is amazing in the movie. Martin Sheen does a really, really, really good job. But the overall basis of the movie is about a kind of a man who has a kind of a psychic potential awakening happening with him after an accident, and he is able to see negative situations before they happen. Um, the movie's kind of cool because to me it's kind of split in two parts, the first half and the second half. But Martin Sheen plays a really ridiculous role as that president, especially in the visions of what he might be doing in the future when he's like, push the button, push the damn button. But again, the movie is just loaded with lots and lots of classic lines and classic scenes. And again, Walken's at the top of his
I
game.
hired you for your abilities as a teacher, not as a fortune teller. Now, don't give me any argument. The ice is gonna break.
Again, if you're looking for top Walken, you're looking for, well, just a really good story. David Cronenberg, I can do a whole episode on him and doing really awesome, scary work with Scanners, Video Drone, Dead Zone. Just a really great director. Really great movie. Of course, yeah, I know you like this one. What do you think?
Yeah, I really, really like this film. I love King. Me, as people have listened to our show know that me and my brother are like really, really huge horror novel fans. Like King is the king master of horror. We also read Dean Koontz. My brother like based his whole thesis of his masters for English on horror in a small time city, basically through like as a tribute to King and Koontz. Love the film, love the book. Actually, really like the TV show too with Brian from The Breakfast Club.
Anthony Michael Hall.
Yeah, Anthony Michael Hall. Uh, it's a it's kind of one of those films that it's perfect for Christopher Walken because Christopher Walken is out there and in terms of his acting, and
Yes.
it's just, he does such a great job playing that person that's like kind of weaving in between two different realities, and in his mind he sees the future and he's also trying to focus on what's going on in his, trying to prevent that as well as dealing with it, which is, just great film. Martin Sheen's in it too, and it made me laugh when you said Martin Sheen because I also picked the Martin Sheen film, but
Oh yeah. Can I be honest with you? This is like the 10th time where I didn't even put that together, and I'm the one putting the slides together. And I've seen both movies, and I couldn't even realize we each picked a Martin Sheen movie, or as But we'll get to that here in a
yeah,
second.
but great pick.
My second movie here is a personal favorite of mine for lots and lots of different reasons. It is John Carpenter's Christine. Um, the first time I seen this movie, I was in very, very good spirits to the points of inebriation where I've never enjoyed a movie so much for the very first time as I think I enjoyed Christine. I found it to be hilarious and probably the reasons I shouldn't have been laughing. It is extremely cheesy in the ways that I love cheesiness. The acting, everything involved in this movie is just to the top. What I like in these type of movies.
Okay. Show me.
You're looking for, Keith Gordon does a great job in Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield, but to me, I think he does an even better job here in Christine because, like, playing that ridiculousness of being a very dorky guy in the beginning to being like this scary, hard-edged, I'm going to try to be tough. The car itself is important because it was the name of my car that I drove in high school. I named it Christine. And my goal is that all the girls that I took on dates, we were going to watch Christine. It worked some of the time, not all of the time. I wish it would have worked more of the time. But that being said, I enjoy this movie again more and more for a lot of the ridiculousness of it. And you know me, man, and I know you love John Carpenter. I love John Carpenter. That's why I enjoy this movie, and a lot of awesome soundtrack in the essence of 1950s rock. A lot of it is stuck inside of my head, even when I've never listened to these songs before. Like every time you try to Break Christine, these songs, like the radio almost talks for Christine, like I keep a knocking, but you can't come in. Do 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 do. Like a lot of stuff like that. I really enjoy this movie a lot. What do you think, Yum?
Oh, it's a classic. It's one of the first films I saw, from Carpenter, besides Halloween, of course. Once I saw Halloween, I went into his catalog of films he's directed, and Christine is one of my favorites. Anything by Carpenter I love, even his bad films that people give me crap for, like Ghost of Mars. I still love Carpenter's films. Um, Way ahead of his time. And the cool thing is, you brought up Christine. I did for 31 Days of Horror, Cat's Eye with
Great.
a Stephen King, anthology film. And the cool thing in there is in the beginning of the film, Cujo appears to chase the cat, Cujo the dog, and while it's running past, Christine the car drives by. So it's kind of like cool little like tie in there.
The
But
James
yeah,
Wood, real quick off sketch before we move on. The James Woods sketch in that is underrated. I like that one a lot. The smoking,
yeah,
but
it's
yeah, definitely, man. Stephen King, definitely always for me a lot, and of course John Carpenter. Great combination here.
yeah, it's probably like the two biggest icons you could think of in the 80s for horror combined on this. Like that's why it came out so well. And Carpenter has like such a vision of directing. His dark, he knows how to set atmosphere, like The Fog, Christine are two of his best atmosphere films. Even Halloween, one of his first films. He has a really, really good way of setting atmosphere, and I think he does a great job in Christine. And people might think, oh, it's kind of stupid that that car comes alive, but it's believable in the sense that it's creepy. And when you were talking about using the radio to make Christine talk, that's kind of been used in movies now. I mean, if you think about it, Transformers that came out with Shia LaBeouf, they used it for Bumblebee. So
Very
it's
true.
kind of influenced stuff in the future, but it came from a horror film, which I thought was pretty cool.
Very, very true. Awesome facts.
Yeah. So two great picks, my man.
Thank you.
I'll start with the Martin Sheen film that I watched. It's actually a film called The War at Home, and it stars Emilio Estevez, Martin Sheen, and Kathy Bates as a Vietnam veteran who comes home and suffers from PTSD. It's based off a Broadway play called Homefront, and the great thing about this film is it's not really recognized, like not really modernly known or not really distributed to a bunch of places. I saw it on HBO a long time ago, and it took me a while to actually track down the DVD because it just started reissuing them maybe about 10 years ago. But this is Elon. This is Emilio's directorial debut, and he wanted to have this film made, and he actually did the Mighty Ducks 3 as a way to pay for this film, which I thought was pretty cool. It just shows tragedy and whatnot going through, Vietnam as a veteran. And Martin Sheen plays the dad, and Kathy Bates plays the mom, and they kind of have, it's the dad's a very proud man, American. They do the Thanksgiving dinner, it's set in Thanksgiving, and you hear Emilio Estevez having nightmares. They have that relationship, and you got to watch the movie to see how it plays out. But to me, it shows really, really the impact that PTSD has on veterans. And I know veterans who have it. I used to be in psychology for my first job out of college, and that was my degree in bachelor's. So it's tough, man. It's really, really tough. And war is it just affects people so harshly, who are involved in fighting it or even just having it happen to their country. So it's one of those emotional films. I like to watch as like to cleanse the palate. So I watched a lot of horror movies this month, like cleanse the palate. And it's one of my favorite films to go to. It's also a very, very well done film. What have you seen this one, Tone?
Yes, I mean, I'm a really big Kathy Bates fan. So back as you were mentioning earlier with John Carpenter, I mean, I do this with everybody, music, everything. I go start and I try to go through it all. And this is a really great performance by her. I mean, as the mom, and then I'm a big Martin Sheen fan. I mean, I love him since Apocalypse Now, since I've seen him in that. He's great, even in Wall Street. I probably like him more in Wall Street than I even like Charlie Sheen, but that's a different conversation. He's a good actor. Emilio, again, I've always liked Emilio. So like seeing Emilio in anything and, and him being able to shine in this movie, especially directing. And I also like to look at things that like it's kind of cool when you get to work with your dad in a way, and to see it on screen, especially in a performance like this. Martin Sheen is just really off topic on Martin Sheen. One thing I thought that was always really cool about Martin Sheen, here about 3 hours down south from right around where you live, is where James Dean is from. Um, on many, 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 many occasions, Martin Sheen has made an effort to go to this town to make sure that the perseverance of James Dean's career and what he was, and there's a museum. But he has taken money and time to do that. And that's something small. I know he's done a lot more bigger things than that, but Martin Sheen just seems to be a really cool guy that, like, honestly, this is a performance that it's really cool. So good pick, Yum.
Yeah, thank you, man. Thank you. And yeah, Sam, I know what you mean. I got that from your context. Um, but just a powerful, powerful film. And if you haven't seen it, check it out. I believe you can watch it on Prime. If not, the movie costs like $7. I got it. If you get ordered from Amazon, it's a very, very good movie. It's worth your time. Um, but unfortunately, I kept hearing about this film called The Poughkeepsie Tapes. Now, it's a horror film. It's kind of shot in the discovery of like a mockumentary, I would say. And this came out during the time of Paranormal Activity, where it was kind of shot more in a documentary, so a mockumentary with the cops trying to look for a serial killer who hadn't been caught, and they find tapes. And it's over, I think, 200 tapes, and it's basically him showing his murders and a woman he uh, kidnapped, and basically they're trying to put the pieces together and get the information out there to the public so they can, find this guy. Now, for low budget films, I'm a big fan of finding different stuff. I really, really love this film called The Last Broadcast. So be tuned out to 31 Days of Horror. I'm gonna be doing that this month as a, just spoiler alert there. That film actually set the standard for the Blair Witch Project, which is another found footage film I liked. I liked the original Paranormal Activity. And after that, I think it kind of went downhill because the nostalgia of it and the mystique of it was kind of played out. That's just my opinion. But this film, I couldn't really get into it as much because the acting is really, really bad, in my opinion. And it's not the scenes of the torture or with the victim and the serial killer. The serial killer played a good part. It's more of the people doing the interviews. Um, you could tell they were really trying hard, and I'm like, I'm not an actor, so I'm not gonna who am I to say anything, but it just wasn't. It kind of took away from the film for me. And the concept, well, I know what they were trying to do, it just didn't work for me. Um, so it's not a horrible film. It's a little tough watch with some of the killing scenes, but it wasn't as creepy as people have told me it was. Have you seen this one, Tone?
Unfortunately, no, I have not, Yump. And I don't. I'm trying to think how to broach the subject because it's one that I know. I know you got your naturals and your The Doors movies and the movies that that I like, that I know that you don't like. And I don't know about. I'll never forget going to see Blair Witch in the movie theater, and I walked out of the movie theater and I was hot, man. I was furious. I don't know. I mean, but you saw it and you liked it. So obviously we saw something different. Um, what I saw was a waste of my time and that, but I've also heard maybe it was because you were maybe saw it a couple years younger than me, so it was a little bit more scarier for you. And I could see that too with some of this stuff. Especially I'll be honest with you, I've never watched Paranormal Activity 1 because since that first Blair Witch Project, I've been so skeptical. But you say it's really good, and I've heard good things. I'll watch the first one, but I'm not going to watch the fourth, the fifth, the seventh, the 20th, because to me, as you stated, it seems a little redundant, as does this movie by your description.
Yeah, and the Blair Witch didn't really scare me. I like the fact that they held off on showing the Blair Witch.
I had a problem with kicking the map in the river.
That was stupid. Yeah,
Me
their
and
acting
you,
wasn't great either.
me and you are and that's when I'm like, me and you are walking in the woods, and you kick the map in the river. We're fist fighting, like out there, like we're not like, yeah, we don't need it anymore. We got our own intelligence. But like, I get it. It was a horror movie. You know what was scary about it? The last shot.
Mhm.
I will say that. Like, if there was more of that in the movie, because I remember going, what was that? But it was so quick, you couldn't really digest it. And then it was like, maybe I was mad about the map too long. So, you know.
And I think too, the thing that got me kind of more into it was the promotion for the film. They treated it like it was a true story. They had their own website saying the actors were missing. They made them go off and like kind of hide for a little bit. They also, I believe A&E had a Curse of the Blair Witch documentary that made a whole like fake documentary of the Blair Witch history and added in stuff with the killer of the person that put the people in the corner. I forget his name. I think his name was Chester. He put people in the corner of the rooms, the children. And that's that I watched that before I saw the film. So that kind of like built it up to where, and then when I saw the film, did I think it was scary? No, but I thought I can understand what they were going for. And as I gotten older, I appreciate, they were trying something new. And like if you watch the last broadcast and that film, they're two totally different films. Last broadcast does have they're looking for the Jersey Devil in last broadcast, but it's a totally different kind of
That's kind of cool.
issue in it. Like there's no
hearing the word Jersey Devil sounds cool
Yeah.
to me, hearing ghosts floating above my bed. It's like, well, I need a little more than that.
Yeah, but check out Paranormal Activity. I think you'll like it. It shows a lot more than you would think.
I will watch it.
But the other sequels, for me, they weren't that great.
Sounds good.
But that's what we watched this week. Let us know what you watched over in the comments on YouTube, on Twitter, or X, or wherever Elon decides to sell it for, or over at our Twitter handles at Lil Yumper, or at the Sugar Baggy, or Hook Up on Music, or the After Show podcast. Tone, we got into what we watched this week. We kind of got off into a little tangent about films, like we always do. But I'm really excited to bring on our guest for her segment of Keelin's Cuts. Again, she's going to be discussing one of her horror films that might not be well known and is kind of a hidden gem. So let's I
mean, when you real quick before she comes on, when you sent it to me, my eyes were like, what? And I'm not gonna lie to you, you didn't spell it right when you sent it.
I know.
So I'm like, wait a minute here, and I wasn't gonna ask you because that's how I gotta be smart, like with the movie, like because if I ask you, it's like I don't know what I'm talking about. But I'm like, knowing her, Richard Mazur's in this has got to be what it is.
Yeah, I noticed that too, and I sent it, and like it was hours later, so I couldn't edit my text. So
no, you were good. You're good. I got you covered, my man.
Yeah. All right, let's get into her intro here. Miss Keelin, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Very good.
Glad to be here, as always.
Yeah. Tony said it already. I spelt the movie Bogedy.
Oh, boggity.
Yeah, boggedy.
That's what I was like. And I went to like 17 different sites and put Buggity. I'm like, nothing. It's gotta be this movie. It's gotta be.
I felt so bad. I'm like, I was like, oh my God. But hey,
did I spell it wrong? I might
no, you spelled it right. You spelled it right. It was just me. It was just me being me.
It happens. Yeah. Mr. Boogedy. Mr. Boogedy.
Yeah, Mr. Boogedy, which is a Disney short film that was released in 1986. This film is directed by Oz Scott, who is mostly known for TV. He did shows like Jag, Hill Street Blues, Black Lightning, Gotham, SWAT, and he also did Archie Bunker's Place, which is kind of cool. Tone already alluded to who's starring in it. Richard Mazur, Mimi Kennedy, Benjamin Gregory, Bud himself, David Faustino, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Christy Swanson, and Howard Witt. So, Key, what was your first impression of Mr. Boogedy?
Well, the first time I saw this movie, I was a kid. This was made, we talked about it being released, I guess, in 1986. It was when Disney had the Disney Sunday movie series, which they had a lot of series for a long time. Now, they don't need that. But yeah, it would play on like ABC. So my parents recorded all of the movies they would show. So we had a ton of just like VHS tapes, and this one was one of my favorites. We also had the sequel to it, which we can talk about more later. But yeah, I mean, when I was younger, I watched this with my brother and sister, so there's a lot of sentimental value. But I think what's interesting about it is that as I've gotten older, I appreciate it in a different way. I feel like it's definitely one of those movies that, yeah, your kids can watch it, but also as a parent, you might it might hit differently, or just even as an adult. I'm not even a parent. So yeah, I think that's kind of why I think about it like every year, which is really weird. I'm like, what am I, 5 still? Maybe I am 5.
No, we're all kids at heart.
Yeah,
we're all kids at heart.
It's classic.
Yeah.
So did it live up to like its 80s charm, like you might expect from like made for TV Disney films? Like I remember, one of my favorite made for TV Disney films, and it was a 90s film, is Brink. I love Brink. I don't know why. It's about skating, if you guys have not seen it. It's very corny, but I love it. Me and my brother still love it. So, Disney was putting out some bangers, man. They had Brink, Smart House when I was growing up. Mr. Boogedy came out a year after I was born. So I didn't watch it right away. I had to go back and watch it. But did it live up to like your 80s, type of for a Disney film?
I think so, because I mean, if you watch it now or if you watch any clips, most of them appear to be from somebody's like VHS tape, and like thankfully they've held on to it. I don't know if on like Disney Plus they have actually still have it. So I mean the nostalgia is like baked in there. But yeah, I think the funny thing about so many kids movies from like the 80s and before is like, well, they're actually kind of like messed up, where it's like this could actually be very scary for a child. So I think there is that element that very much I feel like is of the time. And then also, the cast, like you named off 2 heavy hitters that were child actors of the 80s and into the 90s with Bud and Buffy. And then, I mean, Richard Mazur's like 80s dad. I think he's my favorite 80s dad.
I mean, Richard Mazur is just great.
Exactly. Look at that acting job. Mummy came alive. Yeah. I feel like Richard Mazur too is like very recognizable for people that like horror and horror adjacent movies. So great.
Yeah, great actor. Also he was in It. He was Stanley in It, which he did a great job in.
License to Drive, Dad.
Yep.
Just a super dad.
Yep.
Yeah, wasn't he also in My Girl? My
Girl?
Yeah.
The Thing?
The
Thing. The Thing, yeah.
Encino Man.
Encino Man. Oh, he was the dad in Encino Man, yeah.
Yeah.
Risky Business.
Risky Business, yeah.
Richard Mazur is the 80s, I just thought it was funny when I saw that, David Faustino and Christy Swanson. I'm like, you got Bud and Buffy, which I thought was hilarious.
Yeah.
Last time Keelin was on, I talked about names that me and my friends used to throw around in 8th grade. Richard Mazur was another name. It just sounded awesome. Richard Mazur. And honestly, he is awesome. He's very awesome.
Yeah. He's got a charisma about him. And he's kind of like the same guy here in Mr. Boogedy that he is in It. I mean, you only see him a little bit in It as an adult, but yeah, he's just like basically the same guy, but it works because it's very charismatic, very funny. He's goofy. Great dad.
And the crazy thing is, the title Boogedy, which when I did a little, research for the film, Michael Janover, who wrote the film, got the boogedy term from a segment, The Ledge, from Stephen King's Cat's Eye. And the reason is when the guy's walking, the bad guy is making him walking on the ledge, keeps caught streaming at him, bogey, 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 and that's where he got it from.
Oh,
That's
very
so interesting. Like, yeah, it's so random.
And it's kind of ties into what we just talked about last segment, which is kind of funny. So we're hitting on all how I say all corners, I guess they say. I don't know how the thing goes. Don't listen to me. I'm just rambling. But
I listen to everything you say.
good stuff.
thank you.
It's good. It's good.
What are your thoughts on the character of Mr. Boogedy himself?
Yeah, I think it does a great job in this movie because they don't really show him for a while. They build up the like, oh, our house is haunted, and then kind of bring out the lore more. And for anybody that's not going to watch it, I guess the spoiler, cover your ears if you are, is that it is a haunted house from like colonial era by a big creepy man, and he is a creep. But yeah, they do a good job of like building suspense around him, not showing signs of him, showing weird stuff happening around the house. And then when he's revealed, I think one of the kids describes that he looks like his face is a grilled cheese or something like that. And it's a great description because his face is sort of like moist and all like cratery. Yeah, and I think he's pretty creepy. I think his voice is creepy, and then his lore is creepy. I think it makes him a little less mysterious, but yeah, he's an imposing figure, which is so nice. Like that, and with Richard Mazer like being a goof and kind of joking about him are great combined.
Yeah, I would agree. I love them. Like I said, less is more sometimes, especially when you don't have the special effects of like a big studio. And like in talking about the special effects, how'd you feel about the visual effects and practical effects of the film? I'm a huge fan of practical effects. I even love them now over CGI and whatnot. But how did you feel about them in this film?
Yeah, absolutely. Same. I love practical effects. I think that's one reason I like Jordan Peele a lot. Is that he still does a lot of stuff with practical effects. I respect him just for all the work put in and the creativity, but then also they're so much more effective sometimes. So even though this movie is kind of goofy, I think it ends up looking pretty good because of all the practical effects. They do, whenever they're showing kind of Mr. Boogedy's lore and like flashbacks of colonial times, they make it, it's like a smoke machine kind of, but it's like makes it very dreamlike and hazy. And then there are a few corny things. Like I think they see that Mr. Boogedy has like walked up on the wall or their ceiling and they have like green gummy footprints, but it's very interesting. It gets the point across. So yeah, I think it's fun. Obviously not like like Oscar winning, but it's interesting and I appreciate the creativity without CGI.
Great.
Yeah, would totally agree. So were there any particular scenes that you thought were like memorable or like that were really spooky to you, even when you were a kid?
Yeah, I think when the stuff is first moving around and happening, all of those parts kind of scared me. The scene, I think it was that mummy scene actually that you just showed when Richard Mazer confronts the kids because he thinks all of this spooky stuff has been happening because the kids are playing practical jokes, and he actually gets like serious for a rare time in the movie, and he's like, just tell me, I want to know like who did it. And then the organ starts playing itself, and then the mummy starts dancing, and I like that moment because like throughout the film he's like goofy, they're all kind of goofy, and then he's very serious for that one like quiet moment, and then it gets a little creepy. Obviously not terrifying or anything, but yeah, I like that.
So one of the things, for these types of films, because Disney is more directed towards kids and now maybe teenagers or preteens, it's kind of hard to blend in both scary and kind of like spooky elements to a film. When I was growing up, Are You Afraid of the Dark did a very, very good job at doing that on Nickelodeon. Tales from the Dark Side did that pretty good, and for more of a 80s, 90s version, but that was more geared towards like preteens. Uh, does this film kind of do a good job at doing it, like kind of blending in the element of comedy as well as being spooky?
Yeah, I think so. I think like I mentioned, I think the characters are kind of a good balance where it's like, oh yeah, this is fun and silly, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is real. And then some things I think the sets are good, the house is spooky. And honestly the lore is a little spooky as well. And then I don't know that this is so much spooky to me as it is an observation. I don't watch a lot of like newer Disney stuff, but I think it's funny that so many older like movies and cartoons will make references basically to Satan or the devil. Because I think, yeah, the town they moved to is called Lucifer Falls. And I don't know how often people get away with that today, especially like Disney movies. It could be happening. I don't know. But I think stuff like that is pretty funny. And definitely very like, oh yeah, this is this is like an 80s or 90s, 80s movie, maybe 70s. Yeah. I feel like it does do a good job of that, and then adds in those like satanic elements as well. It's not a Christian film, okay?
Yeah, it's totally 80s. I mean, they had that stretch of thinking about the devil.
Right,
That
yeah. That's a good point. Like Satanic Panic.
Yeah, so I'm guessing that's why it was pretty predominant then. But I mean, it's starting to make its way back now. I mean, we just had what Night with the Devil was a film, and the Exorcism films, and the possession films are coming back. But given that Mr. Boogedy was originally made as part of Disney's Sunday movie series, you think it still holds up today for like a modern audience, or is it more geared towards nostalgia? Like, do you think as a more modern audience can actually watch the film?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We lost Tony.
Yeah.
Bye, Tony. He's been taken by Mr. Boogedy. I think that's a really good question. I was actually thinking about this myself. Like, could we do this today? I think there could be an attempt, but I don't think with the same elements it would be successful. I feel like from what I've noticed as time has gone on, people are like more, especially younger people, are more and more jaded about horror movies in general. They're like, ooh, I'm excited to see the scary movie, and then they come out and they're just like, well, that wasn't scary. It's almost like it's a test. Whereas I feel like I'm more like, yes, I will easily let this scare me just to have fun. So I wonder if that kind of shift culturally would let this stand up. Selfishly, I would like to see it remade, but yeah, I don't know if it'd stand up now. And then, I was thinking about just the entire like Disney series and all the stuff they did. Like having this on ABC was such wide exposure. People didn't have as much access to things. Yeah, I think maybe not so much, but I hope somebody attempts it just because I'm curious. I don't think it would have the same effect. Like you said, I think nostalgia is probably a big factor.
Yeah, I'm kind of like indifferent and kind of torn between the two because I I recently watched The Haunted Mask for Goosebumps, and that's still pretty creepy. Um,
Yeah.
Even though it's geared towards kids. And then, my son loves the I don't know if you ever watched it. It's an animated cartoon, but it's Ichabod Crane and the
Yeah.
Headless Horseman. I think it's a two-part series with Mr. Toad. But the Ichabod Crane and and the Headless Horseman segment is pretty creepy for that. That's like in the 50s, I believe, 50s, 60s
Yeah.
when the animated film came out, and it's still pretty creepy just for kids, and it's a cartoon. So
Yeah.
I think, after I haven't seen Mr. Boogedy in a while, but I remember watching it and thinking about it. If you showed it today, I mean, some kids might think it's corny, and some kids might think, "Hey, this is older, but it still can hold up." Would I like to see it remade? Yes, but it has to be done correctly. Like, I don't want it to be just like they made Halloween Town 2, and I didn't like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'm just not sure of how it would hit now.
So you did say there was a sequel to Mr. Boogedy. Like, tell us a little bit about that one.
There is a sequel, Bride of Boogedy, which we also had on VHS tape. Thank you, parents. I don't know where it is now. Luckily, everything's like available online. And yeah, I think he goes back. Yeah, he goes back to the same family and basically tries to make the mom his bride. Is that right? I think it's his mom. Or the mom. the Davis mom. Was it her or the daughter? One of them. I don't watch that one as much, but yeah, I mean that's kind of weird.
It's funny. I've never seen Bride of Boogie, I'll be honest. But
That's okay. It's not as good as the first, but it's still pretty entertaining.
but the fact that the way you described it made me laugh. But yeah, looking at just that history that came out in 1987, directed again by Oz Scott and written again by Michael Janover. It was an original episode of the Disney Sunday movie, and I kind of wish they would bring stuff like that back.
Yeah.
It seems like even watching old TV series like Roseanne, like take out Roseanne the person and just do Roseanne the show. Like I used to watch that show a lot, like because it was on all the time. It was like a popular show. I used to love their Halloween episodes because you see what kind of cool costumes they're gonna wear. She was really big on doing like pranks, which I always thought was cool. And not just that, like even the kids shows like Family Matters or The Simpsons Halloween, they always did something really cool for Halloween. And it kind
Yeah.
of feels like that's kind of falling away in TV today.
Yeah. No more spooktaculars. What the hell?
Yes. So I wish they would bring something like that back for this month or even have like something cool for kids, like or preteens every Sunday on ABC or Disney to get like the kids kind of drawn in. Like we're gonna watch like a film that's made. I mean,
Yeah.
they have it, or even release the old ones. They have it. Just get it out there. But
Yeah.
it's just I don't know. It's just weird. Like it's something that we grew up with that's not there anymore.
Yeah, another thing I was thinking about is just how, I mean, the idea of a Disney Sunday movie itself it's so weird now because it was almost like a TV version of like when people used to gather around the radio sort of thing. And I think another thing that's weird about it is Michael Eisner, the CEO of Disney, would introduce it each week. Like, how often do you see a CEO figurehead now? I'm okay with that, but that's kind of like weird to me and very interesting to me that he had so much of a face with Disney. And they did cool intros, like themed intros for each of the movies they did. So the Mr. Boogedy one is on YouTube, and it's very, very funny because he's like, "Oh, they're playing a joke on me." And it's like, "Nope, you're haunted. You're haunted, Michael Eisner." So that is something outside of the movie, obviously. But when I look back on that, I'm like, that's so strange to think of today.
Yeah, definitely. Tone, do you have any thoughts on Mr. Boogedy?
I feel like Mr. Boogedy has gotten into my internet tonight, and he's going to haunt me even more later after this. And honestly, this picture and doing research for this, another one I really appreciate you bringing to the forefront because, I mean, come on, who talks about Mr. Boogedy?
Nobody.
You know what I mean?
Just
Nobody,
me.
which is
It's only
well,
me.
which is awesome because, if you would have brought like, oh, here is Saw. And I would have been like, Saw, we've all, I don't want to talk about Saw. I want to talk about Mr. Boogedy.
Noted.
and Richard Mazer is, and Richard Mazer's great.
He doesn't get enough love,
Yeah. No, he doesn't.
We should have Mazer Fest. We can make shirts.
We're going to do a Mazer Fest, Yumper. You've heard it here first. I love it.
We can do it. Eventually, if we ever get it going, we can actually do, I think Amazon, we have a Twitch channel, and I think we were eligible for watch-alongs with subscribers or followers. So I can see how look into that and see maybe one day we can do a film where we all just watch it
cool.
Mystery 3000 style.
That would be cool. We
so
can invite Richard Mazer.
Yeah. Hopefully he's more receptive than what's his name? Buddy from Double Dare. When you did the video for Double Dare, we reached out to him. Baloney tagged him, and he's like, "I have no idea what you guys are talking about."
Jeez. Cool.
Yeah, but yeah, that'll be kind of cool. But Keelin, we love your picks. I love talking horror with you. I know we text back and forth when you go see movies and you tell me if they're good or bad. It just cracks me up because we both kind of have the same sense of humor when it comes to horror films, as does Tony. But that's why we love having this segment with you. Could just bring up new stuff.
New stuff that's old.
Great stuff.
Yeah, great stuff. Is there anything you want to promote, Keelin?
No. You guys, everybody that's listening, always watch this show, or else.
Or else Mr. Boogedy will get you
Yeah, that's true. He will take you as his bride.
and make
Oh.
you watch Bride of Boogedy.
He'll take you on a date to
Oh,
watch Bride of Boogedy.
some people might be into that.
They might be.
It might be.
Sam says slick stuff, neat
neat
stuff.
Mr.
All right.
Boogedy. Mr. Boogedy's probably slick.
I can see that.
He's all floppy, probably. Anyway, I don't know.
I like his moistness is the thing that's always going to remember tonight.
Looks like
Moist face.
he has boils in his face. So
Wow. Wowie, wow, wow, wow.
That's right. Boogedy.
But thank you so much, Keelin, for coming on and talking Mr. Boogedy. We would definitely have you on again this month if you have time to do one another of your Keelin's cuts. This is your month to shine for horror films.
I'll keep it going forever. I have a horror problem.
Thanks a lot, Keelin, and we will see you again. Thank you so much for coming on.
Bye. See you.
The awesome Keelin for Keelin's cuts. Yeah, Keelin's perspective on horror is great. Like she watches everything, which is like just like me, like you told me, watch pretty much anything that has to do with horror and film in general, and
just great
hit or miss. And I love the fact that she comes up with films that you haven't heard about in a while, which is always good to look into. But since Keelin is gone, we're gonna do a little commercial break here. So if you're listening to the audio version, we're gonna be promoting our new shirt for Penguin Voorhees that is on sale at Sadistic Penguin Studios, Big Cartel. Here it is. And the shirt is available at Sadistic Penguin Studios.bigcartel.com. You can pick it up. It's on a limited time. It's only for the month of October. So check it out. And basically all the funds go into the show. So thank you again for everyone who's bought one. And it's a pretty cool shirt, Tone.
Very awesome shirt. It's really showcases again just our love for October. And honestly, the Penguin, just a little while ago, my 4-year-old daughter goes, "Daddy, what's with the penguin?" And I said, "It's our symbol, honey. It's our symbol." And that's what it is. It's an awesome, again, really cool, awesome Voorhees penguin.
Sam says this soundtrack is an British commercial about the police. You know what, Sam? It is a copyright-free sound from somebody who did a mix-up. They're actually tagged in the commercial video, and they allow you to use it on YouTube. So that's why I did it. But yeah, it's kind of funny. It's a remix to Friday the 13th, which I thought was kind of cool. And I'm also really into hip-hop kind of beats, if you guys have noticed that. But that's just me. But I digress, as I say. But Tone, let's get into this main event, my man. I know you are chomping at the bit to talk some slasher films, my man. So you want to get into our first one here?
Let's do it.
Remember me, Doctor? I was dying when you had your way with me. You made me give up my secrets when I was feeling particularly vulnerable. Now, is that a nice thing for a doctor to do?
1990s Nightbreed, directed by Clive Barker, who also directed Hellraiser, Lord of Illusions, and he also inspired other horror films and video games, such as Candyman, which is from his short story, The Forbidden. He did a video game called Jericho that he actually was really, really influential in getting it started. Even though it wasn't a great game, it was fun to play to an extent. Undying, which is another video game that was pretty cool, and a horrible horror film, but the story is very good, in Rawhead Rex. It's a film that didn't hit out, but the story is actually really, really good. This film stars Craig Schaefer, David Cronenberg, who we mentioned earlier, Ann Bobby, Charles Hayde, Doug Bradley, and Hugh Ross. It had a budget of $11 million and made $9 million at the box office. This film, I remember reading Books of Blood by Clive Barker and the story Cabal from Clive Barker. It has its own book now. It's a longer story. I really enjoyed Cabal, which is what this film is based off. And I really, really enjoyed that too, and so I went looking for this film, and I remember seeing this film, like, previews and commercials with the monsters in it, and I always wanted to know, like, what was going on in there, like, what it's basically synopsis of the film is a guy believes he's a serial killer. He goes to see a psychiatrist, and he eventually runs away because he thinks he's killing people, which we find out he isn't, and he gets killed, and he goes to this land or grave area where there are monsters and people the undead basically live. You get turned. David Cronenberg plays a terrific, terrific serial killer, with the mask and the buttons over the mask. He is awesome in everything he does. Like, he's like Tony mentioned him earlier. He's man known for Scanners, The Fly. You know, just an awesome actor and director. Has a unique style, and in this, he's such an asshole that just goes and kills people. There's scenes where one of my favorite quotes from this film is when he says, "I'm evil," and the reason this is a slasher is because he goes and slashes people as a serial murderer, and you have these monsters. So it's best of both worlds. You have monsters, and you have a serial killer all wrapped up in one film, and they all have this big fight with the people and the night breed and the end of the film. Tone, what'd you think about this one?
Very cool. A very awesome concept.
Sam says, "Nightbreed is how I was conceived." Sam, that's a hilarious comment. We lost Tony there for a second, but while he gets back, the character that David Cronenberg played is Philip K. Decker, a reference to a sci-fi author named Philip K. Dick. Deckard was the last name of the protagonist in Dick's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sleep, uh, which was later adapted as Blade Runner, which came out, of course, in 1982, a very, very popular um, sci-fi film. This film, I think, has it all when it comes in terms of horror elements to it. You have the monsters that come in. You have, again, the serial killer coming in, and the monsters look really, really cool. You have one that looks like a demon. You have another one that's kind of like a chunky fat guy who has these like eels come out of his stomach. You have another one that is basically like a porcupine living person that shoots her quills at people. You have another one that can change into smoke and basically like kill people that way. Like, you have a great scene where a person is left out in the sun. I guess as they're like vampires, they can't be out in the sun at certain times, and he basically turns into ash, which I think is a really, really cool special effects scene done by them. And then, you have the character of Boone, played by Craig Schaefer, who's kind of like a dorky. He's really obsessed with this place called Cabal, and well, he's really obsessed with the town. Like, now he's known as Cabal, and he has this girlfriend named Anne Bobby who doesn't do a great acting job, but it adds into the kind of like the 80s and 90s vibe of the film. Doug Bradley does make a appearance as the leader of this night breed. My advice is, if you want to check this film out, check out the director's cut or the Cabal cut, which was released in 2014, because that shows all the scenes and wraps the story all together. The cut that was released in, earlier than that, it was cut out by the studio, and Clive Barker was very, very upset about that. Which, who can blame him? I mean, they're destroying his art, and I do like to see a version of the film that his vision of the film that I wanted to be saw. It's an awesome film in general. Like I said, the final scenes are basically a bunch of people who are going against the Nightbreed and the Nightbreed against them, and you see a bunch of kills, a bunch of gore. You see all that good stuff coming out.
Am I here?
Yeah, you're here now, Tom.
I switched rooms. I can't take it anymore. Hopefully, I've turned off everything in the house. I don't know what the problem is. Thank you so much for sticking with me, my good man.
No problem, man. No problem. I was just explaining like the stuff, some trivial facts about Nightbreed, the ending scene, talking about the monsters, telling about the guy who has the eels in his stomach, the guy who looks like a demon. You have the lady with the quills that goes for that shoots at her like a porcupine quills at people. Like, what was some of the stuff that stuck out for you in this film?
First, what I was saying before I left was that I always remember for the very first time seeing my dad have the VHS cassette, like he rented it, and it just seeing the words Nightbreed, and probably my mind was going somewhere closer to what Sam was saying down there. Just a little bit about more of the ridiculousness of the title, so to speak. But just again, like you were saying, all the stuff you mentioned when I was gone, all of that stuff is very important to the movie. Some of the stuff that while doing research for the movie, I like Videodrome a lot. It's one of my favorite movies. So to see a Nightbreed that I guess there was a scene that was cut from the director's cut version that kind of honors Videodrome in the movie, with the priest Decker sticking his hand in his stomach, which was a tribute to Cronenberg's film. Of course, as we were just saying, Videodrome. So that's pretty cool in the movie Nightbreed.
Yeah, and there's a character called Narcisse, which is actually the opening, monologue we had to present this film, and he was actually killed in the film, the original film, and during test screenings, the audience did not like him being killed because he's one of their, favorite characters in the film. He's a really, really weird character. This film is completely strange. You have to watch it. And, the test audience are sort of displeased by this, that they reacted in a way where the studio actually made it seem in their release that he would live. But when they released the Cabal cut or the director's cut, Clive Barker's like, nah, that motherfucker's dying. So he's dead in the director's cut. I'm sorry if I'm spoiling a film that is 34 years old. But that's what happens.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, but again, the visuals in this movie, Clive Barker as a whole, really, really important to visuals, especially in the 90s. I mean, some really great movies. Lord of Illusions is one that I actually watch quite a lot. This one, of course, I like just the overall visuals, as I keep stating in the movie. Honestly, what I like even more, I'm going to pull up here in a second, is the actual what was I going to say, like the poster for the movie when it was first released. This one right here, where it's like him standing with all the different souls from down below. I actually remember at the video store, the huge cardboard cutout that was like as tall as I am, 6'3", 6'4", and it's just like him there. It's cool things like that you remember about these movies when they're released.
Yeah, and you could actually check this film out on Netflix. I believe it's still on, and it does show the director's cut. So that's the best way to watch the film, is watching the director's cut. Before we roll off from this film, Tone, the song "Skin" by Oingo Boingo from the album Dark at the End of the Tunnel is playing on the radio, though not performed by them in the outdoor scene where Decker kills the woman he's picked up. It always cracks me up that Oingo Boingo song. I did not know that until I read this.
Oingo Boingo, I mean, you go through, they were like the 80s band, like the 80s house band in so many movies. And now you bringing this to the light for everyone else, this is going to add to them, being in Weird Science. Now they're going to think Weird Science and Nightbreed. No, I'm just, hopefully they do.
Yep. So if you haven't seen it, check out Nightbreed. It's a deep cut from my list. Tone, let's get into your poem. Hold on, my friend. There is a technical difficulty on my end, Mr. Tony.
Oh, don't worry. I'm totally okay with technical difficulties. I'm the king of them. So
give me some cover on this.
In a room that I've never sat in before doing this. This is great.
Yeah, for some reason I picked the same clip twice.
Well, what's cool is that by coincidence here, I got you covered here. This is one of my favorite, most ridiculous scenes in this movie.
Is Tamara here?
No, you got the wrong house.
You sure?
The ridiculous is Tamara here.
Yeah, no, seriously, you want to hear something funny?
Yeah.
Is Tamara here? You sure?
Yeah. I'm sorry.
See you later.
Yeah, it's
We're on the
funny you
same
picked that.
page. See
Yeah.
that? Look at that.
I pulled Nightbreed over twice, that's why I had that.
No, you're
But,
good.
man, this is the show of technical difficulties for us.
It's all
But,
right.
The Strangers, released in 2008, directed by Brian Bertino, who also directed The Monster and Mockingbird, as well as The Dark and the Wicked. This film stars Scott Speedman, Liv Tyler, Hema Ward, Kip Weeks, Laura Margulis, and Glenn Howerton. The film had a box office of 82 million on a budget of 9 million. Also had 17 million dollars in home market sales. So Tone, tell me why you picked this one.
When I first saw it at the movie theater, really, really left me in the I was scared. Not really scared, like, oh my god, I'm scared, but scared in the sense of this movie, I see what it's doing. And the people I saw it with definitely were scared. Um, Very much I like it to throw back. It feels like a lot of the old kind of, well, I don't want to say psycho, but like it's something along the lines of something that's going to leave you not, it's not cheesy, I guess is the word I'm saying. It's not like the Sixth Entry. It's not Friday the 13th Goes to Manhattan, which is a great movie. Don't get me wrong, but this is
Love it.
just a little bit serious in the more serious vein. What's really cool about the movie, though, is it's shot entirely with handheld cameras, which I think we were talking earlier about the Blair Witch. This is another movie that I think the way the director films it is so awesome. And but just to really get off same topic, actually, is the sequels are just so bad that I just don't understand what happened between the correlation between this first one and what they're doing with these other sequels. But in this movie, though, Liv Tyler does a really, really, really good job in the movie. Also, a really, really good job in the movie is Glenn Howerton. You may know him from, It's Always Sunny, but he unfortunately doesn't make it too long. But he does a really good job in this movie. For
Yeah,
the minute he's in it.
Yeah, this film is very highly suspenseful. It's done differently in terms of most horror films with psychopaths in it. As far as trying to get into the house. Just that scene we played twice. It's Tamara here, but the fact that she says at the end, "I'll see you later,"
Mhm.
it's still creepy, and you can't see her face because he tries to click on the light and lights out. Just a strange, strange film. The characters of the strangers are freaky. This, it can be real life in terms of people coming into your house and taking you over and basically, torturing. I mean, there's worse things that have happened in the world, and it wouldn't surprise me if this was actually based off something that has happened or has happened that nobody really talks about. Um, it's just creepy, and then, the part where they meet the 2 kids passing out the Bible,
Mm.
the church stuff at the end, she asked for one, and he asked, "Are you a sinner?" And she says, "Sometimes." Even the great Kurt Russell said this film always scared him.
But that's I think it really drives home that point, you know what I mean? I think it drives home the point, as you stated, is it's scary, and what I like is the ambiguity too of the characters. You don't really ever know where they come from. You don't really know what the purpose is. They just show up and they really, really wreak scary havoc.
Mhm. Yeah, and just going through my notes here, according to director Brian Bertino, the film is partially based on an incident he experienced as a child. One evening, a stranger came to his door and asked for someone who was not there and left. Then later, Bertino found out that other homes in his neighborhood had been broken into at night. They could have been casing his house. Not to this extent, but I mean, it's still pretty crazy, especially what's going on in the world that something like this could possibly happen.
That's true.
Uh, and the cool thing about this film, Tone, is that they shot, the whole film with handheld cameras, or steady cams, so every shot had some camera movement, which is I think adds to the suspense of the film because you're constantly moving. You're constantly scanning the area. I love the fact that it's shot kind of in like a low contrast dark light, so you can't really see what's going on to a certain extent that adds suspense to it. It's really, really well done. I didn't really like the sequel after this, but I really like this one.
Very awesome.
Great, great pick, my friend. Are you ready to get into our next one, my man?
Let's do it.
Who are you? For God's sake, what are you doing?
I know what you did, Billy! Filthy Billy! Billy! Billy!
Stop this! Oh, Jesus Christ.
1974's Black Christmas. The film was directed by Bob Clark, who did A Christmas Story, Baby Geniuses, Porky's, the first one and the sequel, Rhinestone, and the all Academy Award winning Karate Dog. This film stars Olivia Hussey, Keira Duella, John Saxon, a very young John Saxon, and Margaret Kidler. The movie had a budget of $620K and a box office of $4 million. There was a remake to this film. The original blows it out of the water even till today. This film stands out to me because it's one of the first slashers that actually creeped me kind of out just because of the phone calls that he makes. And, the way you don't really know who the killer is. And even the ending of a film, you don't really know who the killer is. If he was this person or that person, you don't know. You know they blame it on somebody. It's very, very gory for a 70s film. And it's very terrifying in what it presents. Like somebody's in your house, you don't know where they are, but they're making phone calls. You have the anxiety of when they're going to come. Your friends are missing, people are dying, and NBC scheduled this film for its primetime network debut on January 28th, 1978, under the title Stranger in the House. On January 15th, 1978, two female students at Florida State University were murdered by an assailant who broke into their sorority house where they lived. Three other young women in the immediate vicinity were attacked and assaulted. NBC received numerous pleas from locals to pull this movie from the broadcast in light of the crimes. And after first stating that they would offer the local affiliates an alternative to the broadcast, they decided to just pull the plug on the movie altogether. Instead, the film Doc Savage, Man of Bronze, was shown. NBC ran Stranger in the House as a late movie on May 14th the same year. The perpetrator of those crimes was serial killer Ted Bundy.
Ooh.
So it's creepy, man. It's just it's kind of, even though it's not based off Bundy was after this film was made, but it still adds into like stuff like this can really happen. And I think that adds the more reality and the more real scenarios add more creepiness to it. Don't you agree, Tom?
Yeah, I would have to definitely agree with everything that you said. The idea of somebody being, as you stated, like that's why there's another movie called When a Stranger Calls, where the guy's in the house and Carol Kane doesn't know she's in the house, and like he's like literally like painted like on the wall and you don't know he's there. Just creepy stuff like that. In this movie, I have to sadly admit I saw the remake first, and this is within the last couple of years, and then I watched this one, and of course this one is superior to that one. You have Margot Kidder in this one, which is great. Just a good movie, a great pick.
Yeah, it really is. And this film was, again, like we talked about Bundy. This film was kind of inspired by Canadian serial killer Wayne Bowden, known as the Vampire Rapist, which is a pretty fucked up name. And his crimes inspired Roy Moore for the main plot of the film.
What I liked, one thing that before you go on, is that I liked how the score was created with he used composer Carl Zidler used like knives and forks and combs and a whole bunch of other stuff to give that unique sound to the score. I thought that was cool.
Yeah. And among horror fans, this film is sometimes credited as to come up with a popular convention of a killer calling the house. However, it was preceded earlier by the severed arm, in which a radio announcer is called repeatedly by the killer. That's soon, and that kind of happened in the fog as well, right? Where they kept calling,
Yeah.
which an radio announcer
Great.
is repeatedly called by the killer, and then Mosey had a 1974 film. Mosey had the same thing, but it's still creepy. And like they used 3 different voices for the caller, for the killer to call, which I thought was great because it keeps you guessing on who it is.
Yeah.
It's just a really, really creepy film. And if you're gonna watch the remake or this one, I will go with this one.
Yeah, definitely.
So be sure to check out Black Christmas. And it was made for such low money and made like 4 times its budget, like more than 4 times its budget. But let's go on to another film that is one I have not heard in a very long time, Tone.
The next thing anyone knows, Cropsy's trapped alive and burning in his bunk. They try to get him out, but the fire's so fierce they can't reach him. All they can do is stand outside and listen to him cry out in agony. They say he smashed his way through the bunk room door, just a mass of flames. And as he screamed out, burned alive, he cried out, "I will return! I will have my revenge!"
The Burning, released in 1981. It's directed by Tony Malum, who also did Split Second with Rucker Howard, which cracked me up, White Rock, and Phoenix Blue. Tone, this film stars Brian Matthews, Leah Ayres, Brian Backer, Jason Alexander in his first feature film role, and Lou David. This is what the thing that cracked me up the most was when I was looking for budget. I always look for budget and box office. I could not find budget anywhere on the top sites like IMDb, Box Office Mojo, or the Numbers, which are like 3 reliable sites. All of them said NA for the budget, and all of them said this film made $315 at the theaters. Tone, tell me why you picked this film.
Well, a quick look at where I look. I don't know if this is exactly the figures in which it made, but it's saying it had a box office of $707,000 with a $1.5 million budget, which is about on average of what you said, just more money. But the difference between both is just not very good. But for me, this movie was pointed out, it was about 10 years ago. Somebody asked me, was like, "You ever see this movie, The Burning?" And I was like, "No." And then he started saying that what you played at the beginning, and I'm like, "No." He's like, "Tom Savini, he does the I'm like, "I love Tom Savini, Sex Machine." And he's like, "Yeah, you got to find this DVD." So me and Katie, we were actually out at my sister's in Illinois, and we went to like a used DVD shop, and I actually found it for like $12. Never saw this movie ever, and I'm like, I'm gonna buy this movie. He said it was awesome, and the movie it's awesome because it's definitely for its time. And that pretty much leads to him becoming like a Jason-like figure in this movie and haunting a very young Jason Alexander, like 22-year-old Jason Alexander. Brian Baker, if you're not familiar with him, he is the awkward gentleman in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. In a really, really great role is Mr. Fisher Stevens from Short Circuit. He's just, again, but the movie is, more importantly, the special effects are really awesome. I mean, Tom Savini does a really great job. There's actually something more scary about this movie than I'm about to share that is actually scarier than anything else in the movie. And that is, well, this is unfortunately the very first movie that Mr. Harvey Weinstein produced. Unfortunately, it should have scared him away to maybe not do movies or be involved in the movie business. But then again, who am I to say? But I like this movie for the special effects. I think they're awesome by Mr. Tom Savini.
Yeah, and Savini actually turned down Friday the 13th Part 2 to work on this film. A lot of similarities with Friday the 13th. I think what's the camp in this film? It's shoehorn or something like that.
The camp in this one is Blackfoot.
Blackfoot, yes. Okay, Blackfoot. And then in Crystal Lake, or they call it Camp Blood in the and it's kind of the same scene where they're going around the campfire and talking about Jason. And then this one they're talking about Cropsy, but still it's a good film. It's the shears, the gardening shears always cracked me up in the pictures. But Cropsy looks pretty creepy, man. He's definitely a creepy looking dude. And I love the fact that Savini, anything with Savini in it is good to me. I just don't like the fact that the Weinsteins were involved, but fuck the Weinsteins. But yeah, the film itself is a pretty decent slasher film. So this is a good pick, Tone. I haven't heard this film in a very, very long time.
Looking for the deep cuts. So as soon as you said deep cuts, I have another one. This was my first deep cut here.
Yeah, and then you hit it out of the ballpark on this one because I was like, holy, I haven't heard this one in a very long time. So we had Mr. Boogity today, and we had the
Cropsy.
burning. So we had two real big deep cuts on this show. But let's move on to our next one, my man. And we're going to actually do a visual clip. So if you're listening on the audio version, we're going to do a visual clip for the next film, and I will explain why. The film is The Collector, released in 2009, directed by Marcus Dunstan. He also did the movie The Collection, The Neighbor, The Unhuman, and All My Friends Are Dead. It stars Josh Stewart, Andrea Roth, and Juan Fernandez. This movie had a budget of $6 million and a box office of 10, as well as 2 million in market sales. Now, the scene I just showed was actually the collector, or the villain of the film, who basically takes a spider he sees, and he's very gentle with it in a house. He sees a spider under the flooring of a basement, in the ceiling of the basement, and he grabs it very gently and he lets it out a window very, very gently so it can go and be safe, while this guy is like disemboweling people, cutting people's heads off, putting hooks into people. It's just a total contrast of that scene right there, and that's why I wanted to show it. Also, this film, The Collector, doesn't talk. The Collector you see in the mask doesn't talk, so it's kind of hard to get like sound clips for this one that were very, very good. But I really, really enjoyed this film because one, it's gory, and two, it's a totally different kind of story. You're trapped in a house with a serial killer, and the film is based off a person trying to make money for his family. He's a thief. He goes and tries to steal something from this house that he gets a tip on. And it turns out that this serial killer has basically taken over the family inside there. And he's kind of trapped in there to get people out. Very, very gory and very creepy. Juan Fernandez does a great job as a collector, and his visuals in terms of his mannerisms, the way he walks around, the way he just stares, and the torture scenes are brutal in this film. When he takes out his tooth, when he shows him basically against like hanging from hooks in his hands that are just basically into his hands and in his back, and like just the tooth pulling part, Tony, is so weird. He takes the chisel and he hammers it in. And he does it with such precision, he's done it before. It's just stuff like that that's just crazy about this film.
I have never seen this movie, so you are selling me on definitely a watch, even with what you described with the spider. I'm definitely going to watch this one. I've seen the box, and I've always been curious because, the box looks awesome. But from the back, he looks like he's getting ready for a lucha libre wrestling match. But definitely not that in this movie. This is definitely not the Jack Black movie Nacho Libre. This seems a little bit more violent.
Yeah, and The Collector's urban legend is a really catch-all urban legend for creepy hermetic neighbors that may be doing something horrifying inside their dungeon-like basements. The most common collector legends is the neighbor who collects human body parts and proudly displays them in mason jars. In Russia, the collector urban legend has a bright future because it's played out in real life. Its new mascot is local Russian historian Antony Moskvin, who stole corpses from cemeteries in dozens of towns east of Moscow. According to police, he dug up at least 29 corpses and made dolls out of them, life size and faceless females with platinum blonde wigs.
Ooh.
So this kind of like is a catch-all for all those urban legends of collecting. Ed Gein or Gein, no matter how you pronounce it, is probably would be considered a collector. But yeah, this guy is completely jacked up though. The main villain in the film, and like I tell you, the gore is pretty bad, but it adds into like you know the
Are there
film. Like
sequels to this movie?
yeah, he did. They're, in my opinion, the first one's the best one. The other ones are okay.
Is it the
But
same character in all of them?
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to watch I don't wanna give away the ending if
No,
you're gonna
don't
watch
give
it,
anything away. I'm just curious
but
from
I would watch, the film, then go from there. But, it's for a film that was basically intended to be a prequel to Saw, luckily that idea was declined and they decided to do their own thing. I think they did a good job with it. So if you haven't seen it, definitely check this one out. It's worth your time. Yes, the cat scene was brutal though. Sam says the cat scene was brutal. And Sam says he enjoyed the film. So be sure to check out this horror film, The Collector. So it's one of the ones I threw out there that doesn't get mentioned a lot, but is worth seeing, my man.
definitely gonna watch it.
Yeah, but let's get into another film that's been getting a lot of traction with its sequels coming out soon. What's that one?
Time to turn our backs on sin and make the commitment.
I'm nothing like you.
Once and for all.
You're kidnapping, murdering sex fiends. I'm a fucking star. The whole world is gonna know my name.
X, released in 2022, directed by Ty West, who also directed Pearl, as well as Maxine, which is a new film that's going to be coming out soon. He directed In a Valley of Violence, The Sacrament, as well as the segment in VHS, Second Honeymoon, and The House of the Devil. The film stars Mia Goth, Jenna Ortega, Brittany Snow, Kid Cudi is in this film. Kid Cudi, I call him Kid Cudi, Martin Henderson, and Owen Campbell. This movie had a box office of $14 million on a budget of $1 million with $2 million in home market sales. Tone, tell me about this one.
I'll get started. The movie pretty much is like Boogie Nights horror version. It's pretty much a group of directors and slash porn stars who are going to be filming a new movie. So they're looking for locations to film, and they end up at a location. But also at this location are these very old people who seem to be not in the right frame of mind, and the whole thing starts to spiral out of control. You find out that the old people are actually the murderers, and there's a whole plot going on underneath. But the performances in the movie are really awesome. And they are, as you stated, Mia Goth does a really good job. Jenna Ortega does a good job. Brittany Snow, good job. What's really awesome is the sequel, which is not to give anything. Well, I'm going to, because you're gonna. Well, the sequel, Pearl, is pretty much the old lady that's in this movie, like her as a younger version. But Mia Goth is playing all of these roles, which makes her a good job, and she is a really great actress. Maxine is actually getting ready to drop on HBO Max here in about a week after having a pretty good theatrical release. But this movie, I like. It's as a newer horror movie that has come out. It is pretty original in the fact that it is a slasher movie, but it also is under the guise of a Boogie Nights porno film being filmed, and really creepy old couple doing a lot of the damage in this movie.
Yeah, it's totally I think they had a film come out for M. Night Shyamalan. I forget the name. I can't think of the name. We did an episode on him where he has they go see like the grandparents.
Oh, yes, that's The Visit.
The Visit, yes, thank you. This reminds me of that.
It does. It does. It's got that vibe.
But definitely a great pick. Very, very, like the scene I played of when she tells him, she's gonna be a star, and that's kind of like the whole Maxine thing going in, the feature film. But the fact that they have the preacher talking about sin, and these people are killing people because they think they're sinning, because they're shooting a porno film in their barn, is kind of like hypocritical. But and when they kill him bad, man. They don't mess.
Oh,
These old people don't mess around. They're just like, yeah, they jack them up, and that was just, when I remember watching this, I'm like, holy shit! But it's like crazy, like when she runs out the house and they shoot that girl, it's like, what the hell? Definitely a movie worth watching. This kind of movie kind of reminds me of like the 80 kind of
yes.
slashers with the sex in it.
Yeah.
But it's actually a very good story to it, once you get into, like, the meat and potatoes of the film. I definitely recommend you guys to check this one out if you haven't seen this one.
I've never seen this movie. Have you ever seen like Motel Hell?
No.
I always remembered because the box at the VHS had like the guy with like a pitchfork. I always like these movies where it was like there's a couple others that I can't think of off the top of my head where it like seems like it's an older couple that they end up going to the place and they end up like being like the actual killers when you're saying to yourself, "Oh, old people, they're not supposed to be killers." Um, I've seen Pearl. Pearl is a little bit different than this movie. It's not as gratuitous. Yes, there we go. That's see what I mean? Like, you go to Motel Hell and you see Farmer Vincent Fritters. But again, just a really, I think, of the newer movies in the last 10 years, it's definitely in the top 20 of a pretty good and original idea.
Now, Pearl is a prequel to this film, though, right?
It is a prequel, but like where this movie is a straight up horror movie,
Mhm.
feels a little bit more like whimsical in the like it's somewhere between Wizard of Oz. There is creepiness, but it's not like where this is straight. They're at the barn. She's the killer. Where I said like Pearl's more of this old lady when she was young. So it's like a whole different like how she became the crazy old lady who she is now in prequel form.
Ah, okay.
And then what Maxine is Maxine's after she left here and she's now in New York trying to be a big star. But Maxine's supposed to be a little bit more like Seven, where it's like a serial killer is killing people and Maxine is like in the background. Where again, it's different than this movie and the second movie, but she's like this intertwining character in these stories, which she's a good character and she's a good actress. I think she's not that this means anything in life, but I think she goes out with Shia LaBeouf.
Shia LaBeouf.
LaBeouf. Disturbia,
Yeah,
which I was gonna
yeah.
pick as a slasher movie, but I didn't know if that would count.
It can be a slasher. But yeah, definitely a good pick, Tone. I would definitely recommend you guys check this one out the first. And then if you want to see the history, check out Pearl, which will be the prequel to this one, and then the Maxine will be the sequel. So if you want to watch them in order, Pearl, X, and Maxine would be the chronological order of them. But in
And before I
release,
forget, I did research. Mr. Boogedy is on Disney Plus, so watch Mr. Boogedy.
yes, I think I might check that out later. Again.
Yes.
But let's get into our next film, my friend.
You are not content with the stories, so I was obliged to come. Be my victim. Be my victim.
1992's Candyman, directed by Bernard Rose, who also did Ivan's XTC, Paper House, 2015's Frankenstein, The Devil Violinist, and Immortal Beloved. The film stars Virginia Madsen, Xander Berkeley, Tony Todd, Cassie Lemons, Vanessa Williams, Mariana Elliott, and Ted Raimi. who I love the fact that he's in this film. This film had a box office of $25 million and on a budget of $6 million. This is one of my picks, and when it comes to paranormal slashers, this is probably one of my favorite films. Just because of one person, that's Tony Todd. His mystique, his voice just creeps you out. This is one of the few films growing up that actually scared me, and it's because it's based in the projects of Cabrini Green, in Chicago. Um, Growing up, like, just because of Tony Todd, I thought he was creepy. I didn't understand the story, what was going on, but, in terms of, like, his lore, they expanded upon it later. They told a little bit of it in the film, but they expanded upon it later in the sequels. But just his mystique, the way he talked, the way he hypnotized. I love the cuts of from waking up into not into your dreamland, and then basically waking up to maybe dead people around you or animals or whatever is there. It's really, really done well. It's shot very well. I love the scene of her coming through the mouth that's spray painted on the wall. That's probably like one of the most iconic scenes. Uh, our friend My Sock Summer from the 108 podcast is scared of Candyman. He's talked about him, and he freaks out about that film. But this just if you haven't seen this one, just the opening scene of them when they're showing it's basically the overview of Chicago while the credits are rolling is probably one of my favorite parts. And then the remake, which is not really that bad, they do it from the looking up. Basically, you're looking up into the sky, which is pretty cool as they pass through the city. Tony Todd negotiated a bonus of $1,000 for every bee sting he got in the film, Tone. He was stung 23 times.
Real? Oh man.
Yeah, he had bees in his mouth, bees everywhere. And the crazy thing is Virginia Madsen is allergic to bees, and she had to get up close and personal to them. Um, and she found out she was more allergic to wasps, not bees, but still, that's still creepy, man.
Very
This film is
creepy.
completely creepy. Tell me your impressions of it, Tone.
Well, before I do that really quick, I'm gonna just really quickly give you a story from 1991. My family was involved. They were involved with the Isaac Walton Club. There's this huge lake, and we would go swimming. Part of this club was a gentleman. His name was Calvin Madsen was his name. And in 1991, Calvin was there with his family. Like, it was a huge thing. And my parents, I'll always remember my dad and mom was like, go over there. There are actors over there. Go get their autograph. And there was not a lot of people there. I mean, we're talking 15, 20 people. And I walk over to him, and who do I walk to the back of this car? It's Virginia Madsen and it's Michael Madsen, and they're standing there. I didn't know who they were at this point. I don't know who these people are. And I get their autograph, and I go back to my mom like I did a homework assignment, and I'm like, I got their autograph. I'll never forget that. And then like a year later in 1992, I'm watching Candyman, and my mom's like, yeah, this is Virginia Madsen. Okay, and now of course Sideways. Of course, all these movies. Michael Madsen, I mean, come on, man. Reservoir fucking Dogs. I blew this off, and they had nobody around, and they were just like loading up the back of their car, leaving the Isaac Walton. And I mean, I could have been like, Reservoir Dogs, Mr. White. I mean, this is like a year after that. So it's like, but I'll always look back and think, wow, it was really cool that I didn't know it. And I bet they thought it was maybe more cooler that it wasn't like this, oh my God. Instead, I was just like, what can I have your autograph? But I'll always think of that because then I see Candyman, and honestly, Candyman's one of the greats. I'll throw a shout out. I know it's not as good as the original, but I thought the remake did an okay job at what it was trying to do. It wasn't terrible. But this movie is just really good and real classic. And Tony Todd is really hard to replace in many different regards. That's why I love Final Destination when he shows up in that. The bees were totally scary. As you mentioned, even every time I drive into the city, I think of the area where this is and think of this is super scary, or anyone who had to have looked in the mirror and had to deal with Candyman. If they did, would have been real scared.
Yeah, and you know, doing research for this, and I also mentioned this because I did review this film for 31 Days of Horror. Uh, this film was inspired by real incidents that happened in 1987 and 1990. One of them in particular, and this is in Chicago, was the murder of Ruthie Mae McCoy, who was a resident of Chicago Abbott Homes housing project. In 1987, McCoy had been killed by an intruder who entered her apartment through an opening behind the bathroom medicine cabinet. Basically, they were robbing people, breaking through the walls, or so then they were breaking through their walls, and they're behind their because every apartment in that complex project was basically the same, and they had a weak area behind their mirrors, their medicine cabinet mirrors, and they were breaking through it and going in. And I think, if I can recall correctly, when she made the phone call, she said they're breaking through the wall, the police, and by the time the police got there, she was already had been killed, which is terrifying. And in this film, they actually have a scene of that where he's breaking through, going towards her. Uh, it's just really, really done well in terms of suspenseful. You also see the fact that Tony Todd's character doesn't make any sound when he walks to add to that supernatural element. Like his footsteps don't make sounds. One of the creepier scenes is when she's in the hospital and he comes from underneath her bed and talks to her, and then they show the video camera, and it looks like she's talking to herself. So it makes you think, like, is she really seeing this, or is this really being, really happening, or is this all in her head? And it's just really, really done well. Clive Barker's original story had been described as an imposing, possibly white man, and he's described as having a rather unnatural shade of yellow that, of course, adds to his candy theme with an unruly red beard. I'm really glad they cast Tony Todd in this role because I can't see anybody else playing this.
Definitely agree.
Also, I'm a huge fan of Tony Todd's voice. I wish he would do more voiceovers.
He'd be great at it. I mean, he could do so much with his voice that he would definitely be very, 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 very successful at it.
Yeah. Virginia Madsen was actually hypnotized and giving trigger phrases on set for this film. So that's why her eyes are look like she's hypnotized. Madsen grew increasingly uncomfortable with this method and asked for it to be canceled. Yeah, it's ridiculously crazy, man. But if you have not seen Candyman, check it out. It definitely holds up to today's standards. It might not be as scary as when you first see it, but when you first saw it long time ago, but it's still, in my opinion, I still love it. And there's a tribute, well, not really a tribute, but a inspiration from Jeffrey Dahmer, who once beheaded a dog and
I was
mounted
going
it
to share
as
that.
a
Glad
stick.
you
Yeah, when he was a teenager, and that scene is actually added in this film. But yeah, one of my favorite films is Candyman. But with
Good
that,
one.
Tom, let's get
Excellent
into
pick,
your.
my man.
Thank you, my man. Let's get into your next one, my man.
I told her not to. Mama told her not to.
Not to what?
Help me, Mama. They gonna hurt me. They gonna hurt Mama. I'm scared, Mama. But I didn't do nothing bad.
I know, sweetheart. You're a good boy. Now nobody's gonna hurt you.
Dark Knight of the Scarecrow, released in 1981, directed by Frank De La Felida. He did Scissors, Killer in the Mirror, and Two Worlds of Janine Logan. The film stars Charles Durning, Robert F. Lyons, and Claude Earl Jones. This was a TV movie, so there was no budget or box office available for me. Tone, tell me why you picked this one.
Remember, again, back in the early 90s, going through, like, my dad had a bunch of, like, recorded movies on VHSs. And what he would do is, like, he would draw these, like, really cool drawings, like, because you would put the tape on the side. So he did, like, in real cool letters, Dark Knight of the Scarecrow. And I was like, what is this? And I, like, went ahead and I put it on. And honestly, Larry Drake, who around the same time I had seen Dr. Giggles, who is a great movie, I wanted to know more about this movie. And I watched it, and honestly, when I think back to watching it the first time, I was pretty scared by the overall vibes it was giving out, and I was also realizing that it was on ABC when it was released. So it's cool, like, when I would watch the VHS, I would, you get the cool commercials, and, I still have that VHS here, so you get those 1981 commercials on the VHS and, all of that, but Charles Durning is awesome. He's a really great actor, and again, the story is about a man who is, he is, he is kind of, he's special, and what ends up happening is that the town kind of paints him as doing, things that are inappropriate, but he didn't do them. But people are really quick, especially probably back in 1981, to push the blame. So then, they end up killing him, and unfortunately, his spirit then comes into the scarecrow and avenges the murder of him. And just a really kind of interesting, different movie from 1981 that I think is definitely a deeper cut than probably anything that we're going to talk about. You know, if you go, which is crazy because you're saying to yourself, this movie even has, a Rotten Tomatoes score. Yes, it's got 63%. So a lot of people have seen it. It's a slow burning. It's very creepy in a lot of different ways. And I think that's why I like it the most. It's just that it's overallly creepy.
It definitely is creepy. Larry Drake is always going to be known as the character from Darkman to me, as
Yeah, yeah.
Durant. Because he played that role so well. This is a film that, even though it's a slasher, I was rooting for the killer because the people that
Yeah.
killed him
Oh
like
yeah.
pissed
Oh,
me off so much. I was like, oh my god, because he was basically he didn't really do it what they were saying, and
well, it's crazy you should say that because my last pick, I root for the killer too, but we'll get to that here. We'll get to that here in a few minutes.
yeah, but it kind of pisses you off that they killed him, and it's all because of the postman that wanted to kill him, which is kind of funny with his stupid little hat. But I did like the fact that the killer got some revenge. But the cool thing is, Jocelyn Brando, who played Mrs. Ritter, who's Bubba's mom, Larry Drake's mom, is actually Marlon Brando's older sister.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, definitely a deep cut tone. I don't know where you can see this one. I saw this one a very long time ago. Let me see. I can look for it now while you're talking about it a little bit
It's
more.
definitely what's again, I'll just keep talking about the vibe of the movie because everything that I read about it, it just talks, it's like unsettling. Again, because as you stated, they're not nice people and they treated him very awfully. So like when the scarecrow's killing him, you're like cheering for it, but like it's not like it's an easy cheer because, well, he's sticking a pitchfork into somebody, which is kind of cool in a way though too. So should you be saying that? Which is, it's a lot of juxtaposition in the awesome slasher genre because you want the guy to succeed. Which I don't know in the collector. Do we want him to succeed? I haven't seen it yet.
No, no, you definitely don't.
So,
You can actually check this out on AMC Plus with Prime Video channels or AMC
oh,
Plus.
sweet.
Also Indieplex, Peacock, Pluto TV, the Roku channel, and Tubi.
Sweet. I'm gonna have to rewatch. It's been a little while.
Sam says this is a Batman Begins ripoff.
Good. I could see it. Unfortunately, they really did want Cillian Murphy for the role, but they got Larry Drake instead. It was
Larry Drake's the man, yo. Durant, you don't mess with Durant. If you guys haven't seen Darkman,
Die,
watch
Darkman,
Darkman.
die.
Yeah, watch Darkman. Liam Neeson plays a ridiculous, like over the top, protagonist in that film. But Larry Drake is awesome in that film. I love that film. But good pick, Tone. I haven't heard this film in a long time. I remember watching it and like it just made me mad what they did to our guy Bubba.
Very, 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 very angry. I guess I never seen it, but in 2022 they did a direct to video sequel, which takes place crazily 40 years after the events of the original film. So I'm gonna have to do some more research on this and get back to you next week on this very probably bad, like The Crow. This would make the
Oh
new
God.
Crow look very, very good. But we'll get back to that at a later date.
Yep. Looking forward to that review, and you better be as angry as me. No. But maybe you won't be. But let's move on to our next film, my friend.
They're probably watching me. Well, let them. Let them see what kind of a person I am. I'm not even going to swat that fly. I hope they are watching. They'll see. They'll see and they'll know. And they'll say, why, she wouldn't even harm a fly.
1960s Psycho, directed by the great Alfred Hitchcock, who did The Birds, Vertigo, The Wrong Man, Marine, Marnine, I'm sorry, The Trouble with Harry, Strangers on a Train, Notorious, the original Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and Sabotage. The film stars Anthony Perkins, Janet Leigh, Vera Miles, John Galvin, Martin Baslam, and John McIntyre. This film had a budget of $800K and made $32 million at the box office, which is like ridiculous for a time in 1960. This is one of my picks, and this is Hitchcock's first horror film he ever made, and it is goes down as probably one of the greatest horror films, if not slashers, in history. It's inspired so many other films, but just the music itself, Jaws, which uses violins and strings, and its music was inspired by Psycho. The shower scene is iconic. It's one of the first films that had a top actress in the name of Janet Leigh, who is actually Jamie Lee Curtis's mother, was the star of the show, and she's killed off very early into the film with the shower scene. Uh, it's there's a line in an epic rap battle with Hitchcock versus Spielberg, and he says that he makes more terror with a bottle of chocolate syrup than Steven Spielberg, which is totally true because it's terrifying when the blood and the violins playing while he's stabbing her. Anthony Perkins does a magnificent job in here as Norman Bates and the Bates Motel. It's iconic in every way. This basically showcased that Hitchcock can do anything, and in my opinion, he's probably one of the greatest directors in horror. He's probably number 2 to John Carpenter, in my opinion, but he's can be number 1. It's a very close number 2. Uh, my favorite. This is my favorite Hitchcock film besides The Birds. What do you think about it, Tone?
I think it's, amazing. There's really not short of words you can say about this movie. I've made jokes, and you're like, what jokes have you made about this movie, Tone? No, I've made jokes and said, like, sometimes when my wife hasn't had her hair done, I said her hair looks like Norman's mother when the chair spins around, and then my wife just looks at me with a dirty look. But I do that quite a bit, and that's how iconic this movie stays in my head. Is a scene like Norman's mother's hair would be something that I would use as a joke to try to be funny. But the movie as a whole, I might be one of the only ones to say this, but I really like the sequels for different reasons that I like this one. This one is good in the old serious Alfred Hitchcock way. The sequels are good and almost like the reason I like the sequels to like the Jason movies or the Freddy movies. They're cheesy in a way. They're almost like shouldn't exist, but they do, which is different than probably like the Paranormal Activities where they're trying hard to scare you. Where Tony Perkins, you can pretty much put him in a lot of different roles and he's going to do a really great job. This is just probably one of the best ones I've seen him in.
Yeah, and it's crazy. I mentioned Jennifer, Janet Leigh and her daughter Jamie Lee Curtis, who is the scream queen of the '70s, and Halloween, of course. And then you have Anthony Perkins, whose son Oz Perkins just released Longlegs, which I thought was a very good film. So we have the horror lineage going, all the way back to this film, which I think is kind of cool. Uh, it's funny when I was doing research. Now I'm not going to list all the trivia I have on here. I have over like 4 pages of notes just on this film alone, and I encourage you to check it out when I drop at Sadistic Penguin Studios when we drop the notes with our post. But Hitchcock wanted to see how Janet Leigh screamed, so he placed the corpse of Mother, the corpse that they used for the body, in her dressing room and, like, listened outside to see how she screamed, and she was, like, going nuts. Uh, when reading this, they said that she was kinda traumatized from this role because it kinda typecast her a little bit in her career going forward, and this is the only role she ever got Oscar nominated for, which is kinda crazy because she wasn't really in it a lot. Just a, like, iconic role, for the film for both her and Anthony Perkins. He's always gonna be known as Norman Bates, and then you got the TV shows that come after it. You have the horrible Vince Vaughn remake that came
Which was
after.
funny because I was actually gonna start, like, talking when you said, "What did I think?" I was gonna be like, "I thought Vince's performance was," and you're like, "Wrong, Psycho." Um, and your boy's in that movie, though, Flea.
Yeah, he is. I love Flea, but that movie was bad. It You know what? Vince Vaughn is a good actor. I just think he was just miscast in that role. I think that's what it was.
Could
Uh,
be.
but if you talk about horror slashers, this is like the grandfather of them all, the film that put it on the map, and it's done by the best. And Hitchcock, really shows off his talents in this film. So I highly, highly recommend you to check this one out if you haven't. It still holds up to this day. And I love the fact that when Hitchcock was filming this with the actors, he told them don't say a damn thing about the plot to anybody. He made them swear. And it's like that's one of the best twists in film history.
I could see us down the line doing a full-blown, breakdown on this movie because it's got everything. As you stated, I mean, Alfred Hitchcock's one of the best directors. The way the camera shots are all filmed by him, set up. The music is iconic. Just a really good pick.
Yeah. Thank you, my man. It's one of my favorites. But let's close this one out, Tone. Let's close out our list with your final pick, my man.
Andy, no, please. We're friends to the
Child's Play, directed by Tom Holland, who also did Fright Night, Fatal Beauty, Tony's favorite thinner. He also wrote Psycho 2, Cloak and Dagger, and Scream for Help. The film stars Catherine Hicks, Chris Sarandon, Alex Vincent, Brad Dourif, Dinah Manoff, Neil Giuntoli, and Jack Colvin. Tone, tell us a little bit about why you picked this one.
Oh, well, first of all, Chuck's one of my favorites. I call him Chuck for many different reasons. I'll never forget, going to the video store and renting this movie and asking to rent it and watching it the first time. And I think because he knew better, we watched it like during the daytime when it came out. I mean, I shouldn't have been watching this movie at the age that I watched this movie at. I mean, I'm watching it the year it came out, which is putting me right around 8 or 9 years old. But you probably don't even remember this conversation, but an ex-friend of the show, we were in his garage with a bunch of other people about a year and a half ago. He was having a barbecue out in the back, and Baloney was there, and you guys were all talking about favorite slashers, and you guys were all saying your favorites, and I was on the other end of the room, and I kept just saying Chuck, Chuck, Chuck. Nobody heard me ever, and I don't think you ever did. But Chucky has always been one of my favorites for the reason that I think he's just very, very awesome in the regards of he's got great quotes like Freddy. He could get you. I kind of feel like a little bit like, especially in part 2, I feel like how you feel about the Night of the Scarecrow. Like those step parents that he sat with and those with Andy in the second movie, they weren't the nicest. So like I'd hang out with Chucky more than them. But I just like his overall presentation. I like the way it was filmed. I like just the movie as a whole. It's really great. of course, Charles Lee Ray. We could talk forever about Brad Dourif. To bring up your Amazing 31, I'm a movie that I'm afraid that I've never seen that I'm afraid of, and your video last year still makes me scared of it, and he's in it. It's The Exorcist 3. You brought up Jeffrey Dahmer too. I guess this was the movie he played for his victims. There's something scary about that movie that I have not been able to sit down and watch. Because of Brad Dourif, he's awesome. I'll probably give it a watch here in the next couple weeks. But all those reasons are why I like this movie.
Yeah, The Exorcist 3, man, it's a very good uh sequel. Like it should have been number 2 because the Exorcist 2 was so bad. And George C. Scott and Brad Dourif play so well off each other, even though you got some corny parts in there. But it's one of the scenes and there's a really lot of good jump scares in that film. I definitely watch it, Tone. It's worth your time to watch that one,
Oh,
man. It's good.
I mean, I know it's great. I've heard great things. Your video was like, this looks amazing. It's more of like, I've always been someone like a movie I'll never forget really quick that well, you know what? We'll get to it here in a little while when we talk about our next topic. But back to this real quick. Just again, the idea, even as a kid, I would go to the carnivals and they would always sell the Chucky doll. I have honestly zero complaints about the remake. I actually thought it was an interesting spin with the new technology, and I actually thought Mark Hamill did a great job on the voice. Um, but like everything else, I know that a lot of people are sometimes they like the original, but I just like the character a lot. I like what he brings to the table, and I like how he pretends to be really nice in front of everybody, and then when everyone leaves, he's throwing the B word, the this word, and that's when it was like, all right, I know Chucky. He's somewhere between, Jason and Mike and Freddy. Freddy's scary in his own way because he goes into your mind, his dreams, but Chucky's a doll, and your dolls come to life. I mean, I've seen, before this, of course, there was, you got your demonic toys or you got your puppet masters, which is like a cheaper version of this. But any idea of thinking toys are coming alive as a kid, it's kind of cool if you like heavy metal music. So like I did, and I like Chucky.
Yeah, one of the things that always cracked me up about this film is Brad Dourif swearing.
Oh yeah.
Like, it always made me laugh, and I'm gonna take over the screen really quick because I wanna
Yeah,
show you
please.
if you guys
Please
have
do.
not seen this, you guys need to see the Mexican version of Chucky, which is hilarious.
A ver, hijo de la chingada, deja de estar viendo memes, pendejo.
¡A la verga, me vale verga, perro! ¡Híjale a la verga, hija de su puta madre, a la verga!
If you have not
Amazing.
seen that, definitely check it out. It is hilarious, the part where she's about to throw him into the fire. He just goes off. It always cracks me up. I saw that a few years ago, and I know I sent it to you and Brian,
That was
and
good.
we said each other. It just cracks me up. But this is definitely an iconic film. It's like, can your toys come alive and try to hurt you? You have Charles Lee Ray, the killer, who's basically a derived from two names like Charles for Charles Manson, and then Lee Harvey Oswald for Lee. And then Ray for James Earl Ray, who killed Martin Luther King. It's just ridiculous, the amount of thought that's gone into this film. Don Mancini, who created the series in terms of writing, I did like the Chucky series that went after this. I actually liked some of the sequels. Now, when we start getting to like Bride and Seed, it got kind of weird, but I did like the revamping of the show. I love the fact they brought the original Andy back.
That was cool.
And I liked the remake. It wasn't as good as the original, which nothing's ever going to be, but going in there with a clear mind and seeing something, it was a nice take on the original and paid homage to the original. Also, the Chucky doll looked really creepy
Mm.
in the remake. This film was like inspirational for, like you said, demonic toys, Puppet Master. the Ghetto Boys, a hip hop group, sampled various lines for this movie for the song Chucky. Bushwick Bill would run around with a Chucky doll with his stage costume when they performed. It's like Chucky was an icon, man, and he still is. Like Brad Dourif, who doesn't get enough of roses for his performances, as like we just talked about Exorcist 3 with him in it. This one, Night Shift, where he plays a different role. You know, he's an excellent actor.
Alien Resurrection.
Alien Resurrection, he plays good in there.
He
Another,
does.
if you want to see him more of a serious role, Deadwood. He's excellent in Deadwood.
Great in Deadwood.
But he's such a good actor, and his voice and his tangents always crack me up.
Oh, great.
But yeah, be sure to check this one out if you haven't. And
That's why I think honestly, I do like. I'll be honest with you. If I'm going to put one of them on, I think I like part 2 because he hams it up more in the voice, especially like when he's just really good the way, like especially like when the parts where he's like he asks him a question and then he turns his head and he thinks a second and then he's like says the nice thing.
Yeah.
Like when he starts to like not be as smart as turning back and forth as he can. It's just little smart techniques in the character that I thought were good. And I think Don Mancini, an excellent script on this first one.
yeah, and some cool things about little trivia things about the film. Sarandon was actually cast as the lead, and he was supposed to be getting top billing. But he felt that Catherine Hicks' character was actually the real lead of the film, and what she is. He said that she should get top billing over him, which is kind of cool that he's recognized that and said she should get top billing, which is cool for him to do. Something that he shows that he doesn't have an ego, which I thought was really, really cool. Also, there was supposed to be a backstory of what happened to Andy's dad. According to the shooting script, Andy's father was called Bob, and he was killed in a car accident a few months before the events of the film. A deleted scene will eliminate the controversy surrounding the mystery of as to how Chucky knew the family history. During the birthday celebration, Andy would make a tour in his room showing his toys to his new friend. He will also show Chucky a picture of his family and would comment on how much he misses Bob. Apparently, Chucky tapped on the emotional attachment to the child to his father in order to convince Andy to follow his plans. Another deleted scene would have shown Andy talking with Karen about the whereabouts of his father. These two scenes never made it to the final cut. And Tom Holland is actually the deceased father in the background in his bedroom as a picture of the director. So the deceased father is actually Tom Holland, director, which that was kind of funny.
Classic.
But that explains, for those who want to know about Andy's dad and what happened to him, that's basically why, and that's kind of explains why he follows Chucky. But love this film. Continuously watch it every year. Watch it when it's not Halloween time. I just think it's hilarious. It's because of Brad Dourif.
It's great.
Also, when he runs at him with a knife and gets shot in that scene just makes me laugh. So if you don't know why, he's like, ah! It always cracks me up. But definitely great pick, Tone.
Thanks.
And that closes out our 10 slasher films. We went through some films that you haven't heard of and some films you have heard of. Let us know your list over at the Show podcast on Twitter, or let us know in the YouTube comments if you've been listening. Tone, do you have any final thoughts on these films, my man?
Great picks, great 5 picks from you. Excellent. I am excited to dip into the collector. That's definitely something. Did you ever see the movie yet, The Clove Hitch Killer?
No.
It's a newer one that came out recently with Dylan McDermott. It's actually really, really spooky in a way. But any kind of movie that has something along those kind of lines, I'm gonna dig. And I'm glad. The reason I hadn't watched it yet was I was afraid it was going to be like one of those cheesy ones. But the pictures that I dug up for this and the video you played, I'm definitely excited to dig into that.
Cool. Yeah, check that one out. But Tom, let's go into what is going to be coming soon, my man.
Let's do it.
Let's get ready to rumble.
Coming soon.
Próximamente.
Coming soon.
Coming soon.
All right, coming soon. We've got next week. We've talked about vampires. We've talked about slasher movies. Next week, we've got some of our scariest movies we think that are scary. And I've already almost gave away 2 of my picks tonight by giving out what scares me. And luckily, I've paused to hold what those are. And I know that they are also movies that Yumper love. And I'm excited to see what movies he picks. It's really going to be really good because, again, it goes along with the amazing Yumpers 31 Days of Horror movies. We're adding even more horror movies during our show here. So we're just a lot of horror movies this month.
Yes, yes. October is a time of horror. And Halloween's awesome, man. Halloween is like people think, oh, we go straight to Christmas, and I'm like, no, hell no. We do Halloween, and then we do Thanksgiving. Halloween is my second favorite holiday behind Thanksgiving, and the only reason that is because Thanksgiving I like to eat like a fat ass. But I love Halloween. This is why I do the 31 days, and why you're doing the 31 vlogs, man. We love the and we're trying to make different types of topics for our shows, especially this month, and talk about movies that scare you. I'm gonna have to dig deep and see the ones that probably haven't been mentioned. I want to see what you're gonna say too. It's gonna be because I don't really scare too easily, but some films.
I'm thinking back to like things where I was a little bit younger, and I still kind of like. Well, I remember when that freaked me out, and I could still see why it freaked me out, as opposed to like this was stupid. This like real quick before we move on, Yumper, a movie that you have covered on your this year's 31 Days of Horror that is one of my favorites, and I consider it a deep cut. And when you had brought the list out, it was the first one that made my eyes open up, and it's Body Bags. That's actually honestly the only movie I would think I've ever actually purchased on Amazon, and it sits there on my purchased movies list. And we watched it last year, and Katie watched for the first time with Katie. Katie loved it. It's great. The way you explained it was great, and that's why for any movie horror fan, tomorrow night I'm going to my sister's Halloween party. Last year at the Halloween party, I'm not gonna lie, I just told everyone you got to watch these videos if you like horror movies, because honestly, you can be at a party, and honestly, I might just do this, go up and start the playlist and just start playing them all. Because if somebody's sitting there, because generally they'll put on these like clips from YouTube, and all it is a bunch of little clips of horror movies. That's what we're doing, and it just looks really cool. So I really appreciate you always digging deep in those awesome movies.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. It's a lot of hard work that goes into it, but I love doing it, which is why I do it every year. We got a new one dropping tomorrow. They drop every morning at 8:15 a.m. On our YouTube here. So be sure to check them out. I also have the list from last year in our playlist, so you can check that one out as well. Yeah, just I always try. I'll continue this until I can't come up with different movies that I haven't talked about. So this will be after this. Will be 93 films I've talked about after this month. So
amazing.
Yeah, I think so. And also, you're doing the the horror tracks or inspired Halloween tracks, which I love. I read those every morning when you drop them out. Be sure to check that out at statisticpenguinstudios.com. Tony's been dropping blogs every day about them.
It really makes me feel like, honestly, by doing this again, I actually love writing. I love it a lot more than honestly I have in a long time, and I'm just excited to keep doing it. So thank you if you were reading. Thank you for reading, Yump.
Yeah, man. We're doing a lot of content over at Statistic Penguin Studios. So if you have can't catch us on the YouTubes all the time, you can catch us out at the check us out at the website at statisticpenguinstudios.com. And that has all our blogs, all our shows. It has the Grateful Ducks podcast and a playlist for all those episodes if you want to catch them all in one spot. It also has the Collector's Corner, where Mr. Han just dropped a great episode on Pete Rose. And he got some people that were unhappy with what Mr. Han's take was on the Hall of Fame, which I thought was great. But you have all our blogs there, Tony's blogs, my blogs. You have Marge's stuff, Keelin stuff, CPG stuff, Brian stuff, as well as the getting drafty pods on there. With all his episodes are up, thanks to Tony for loading those up. So we got a whole bunch of content there for you to explore if you want to check out stuff along with our YouTube. But that's pretty much our filler for like coming up with our show and what is where we're working on currently with everything else on the site. But I do want to give a shout out to our man Gordo, who is dealing with some health issues, and we're helping him for a speedy recovery. I talked to him today and yesterday, and he seems to be doing fine. But we wish him a speedy recovery and to get back and giving us those Gordo treats.
Yeah, I mean, he was when I that news actually really affected me yesterday because Gordo's awesome, and even when I came home, what I said to my wife is wrestling Gordo, who sat next to me. He, he's in the hospital, and she's like, "Really? Oh no, not Gordo." I mean, she only met him two times at a movie thing, and he's just so nice. So get well, Gordo.
Yeah, so shout out to Gordo. But with that tone, let's get into our final segment of the Sugar Baggies soundtrack pick of the week, my man.
Let's do it.
The Sugar Baggies soundtrack pick of the week.
Now, I hate to put you on blast, my man, but last week we were doing vampire movies. And if you haven't heard our vampire movie selection, you should. But you didn't pick the best vampire movie of all time last week. And you're like, yeah, I did. I picked some of the best. I'm just kidding, Yum. Queen of the Dam soundtrack. The movie is god awful. The soundtrack is a lot better than the movie. A lot of great music in the movie, on the soundtrack, throughout. Really classic and cheesy, if you're really thinking and listening deeply, is lead singer Jonathan Davis's voice, but that's not him singing on the stage. Due to contractual obligations to his record label, he was not allowed to appear on the soundtrack disc, but he can appear in the movie, which is really odd when you think about it. But the soundtrack is loaded with everyone from Wayne Static, a Static X, David Draymond, a Disturbed. You got the amazing Kidney Thieves, if you've never heard them, a really awesome industrial band. Deftones, Papa Roach, a really, really great soundtrack. Deftones, of course, doing Change in the House of Flies was on their White Pony album. Just a lot of cool songs. Down with the Sickness, again, with the on their album too. So a lot of these songs you might have heard before, but there are a lot more newer songs, like Redeemer by Marilyn Manson was one that was not played a lot. System by Linkin Park, which is actually a pretty cool song that does not get played quite a bit. Tricky, who which actually has Alanis Morissette on the track, is in this too. But an all around, I think, horror themed soundtrack from a horror movie that was no good, but there are some good songs on it. You ever listen to this one, Yump?
Soundtrack?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny you mentioned this film because this film's actually a sequel to Interview with a Vampire.
No, yeah. I didn't want to even bring up the two movies together, but yes, you are absolutely right.
And it's also the last film that not Rihanna. Aaliyah was actually in. She passed before this film was completed. It's a very horrible film, but the soundtrack is awesome, which is fine. I mean, some like Brian will say The Crow is horrible, but The Crow has an awesome soundtrack. I beg to differ, but no, but as long as a film has a good soundtrack, it kind of makes up for the film being bad, in my opinion. But this is kind of does it. Chester Bennington's in this film, soundtrack.
Yeah.
Change is like one of my favorite songs by the Deftones, and the first time I actually heard that song was here, and then later, for those who are anime fans, Dragon Ball Z had a film called in Japan called Cooler's Revenge, and they redubbed it for American audiences, Cooler is the brother of Frieza. I don't want to get too nerdy, but when Goku changes into Super Saiyan, Change is played by Deftones.
Oh, awesome.
That soundtrack to that film, Tone, I'll send it to you. It's really, really good. They have a lot of breaking point in there.
I'll definitely look into that.
But yeah, that Deftones is played for Change, and it always like it's amps me up. So whenever I think of Change, when I hear the song Change, I think of that scene. But awesome soundtrack pick, man.
Thank you. I'm glad. I was worried that maybe you would see Queen of the Damned, and then this is what you were going to do to me. Good thing you didn't. Thank you.
Poor Perry Farrell, man.
Gets worse by the day for the poor man.
That clip is going to live on forever on the show. But yeah, great soundtrack pick, my man.
Thank you.
So that is our show. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're over a 2-hour limit. So Michael Cotton, this one's for you, buddy. Oh man, it has a big.
It was like 3D there. It was like Jaws 3D.
Yeah, shout out to everyone who watched live tonight and everybody who listens on the podcast on their audio versions. Apologies for the technical difficulties. They happened. Hopefully we deterred them well enough to not hinder your experience watching or listening to the podcast. We'll be back next week with our films that scared us. Also, be sure to check us out on the website as well as a YouTube channel for more 31 Days of Horror, Drafty Pod, Grateful Ducks, as well as Tony's blogs and any other blogs we drop. And the Hook Up on Music as well. It comes every Friday at 7:00. Tony just did a show today, so if you want to check that out after you watch this, you can. If not, I believe the Bums are still on, so you can check them out. They're doing a little get together for Gordo. So go and say what's up to them. They're doing happy hour. But enough of my rambling. We just want to say thank you so much for listening and watching, and we hope you guys have a great night.
Have a good night, everyone. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the At the Show podcast, a Sadistic Penguin Studios production.
Game over, man. It's game over. What the fuck are we gonna do now? What are we gonna do? Maybe we could build a fire, sing a couple of songs, huh? Why don't we try that?